Okay, so just warming up on the blocks or handstand blocks. So I've got both here. I've got the yoga block. This is a cork yoga block, so it's a little bit more comfortable to handstand on because it's stronger. Some of the softer yoga blocks aren't so good for handstand on. I'd probably recommend you don't do them on a soft yoga block. Handstand block, if I'm doing a handstand block, I'm holding it like I'm going to throw it. So I've got 2 or 3 fingers around the front. I prefer 2 fingers. But just make sure that your left and right hand are doing the same thing. Round blocks are nice as well. If you've ever used round blocks or have the opportunity to use them, they just don't need that sweet spot to land onto. If you're coming on and off the blocks, you can put your hand anywhere you want to and you can rotate and things. So they're fun. Okay, so just practicing an arm balance. It could be a crow, it could be a peacock. So whichever variation of arm balance you're comfortable with, instead of doing it on the floor, we just want to do it on the blocks. So if I'm using the yoga blocks, I'm going to place my hand more on the top. I'm just gripping around the thumb and finger. From my squat position, I'm just going to transition to my crow. Back into the squat position again. So just going between those two. And then we could do that on the handstand blocks, same thing. Could go peacock. So just getting used to being on the blocks instead of the floor. If you want to have a little play of alternating, so go one balance on a block, find your balance, then one balance on the floor, and just alternate between the two. Just so you can feel that between the floor and the blocks, and ideally you should be able to change. Thank you. And go between the two and still have that same control in the balance. And just have a little play of my entries to handstand. So obviously we can do this up against the wall or we can do it freestanding. I can do it on the yoga block or the handstand block. So shoulders on top of the hands. I'm going to pick a focal point and keep that exactly the same as I do in my normal handstand position. So there, and I'm going to attempt to kick up, show control, and then come down. So, and then try and repeat that. So we're going to try and get 5 to 10 good repetitions of your entries to handstand. Try the kick-ups. It can be up against the wall. So exactly the same thing. Focal point, shoulders on top of the hands, push the floor away, kiss the wall, and then come back down again. So see if you can get 4 or 5 reps in a row. And again, like we've done with the crow balance, I could alternate between floor and blocks. I have more options in terms of blocks. I could alternate between different types of blocks. So see if you can get 4 or 5 repetitions. Okay, then we can do the same thing, but instead of doing kick-ups, we'll do jumps. So shoulders on top of the hands. Pick that focal point, hips nice and high, but now I jump and push up. So I'm not too worried about what my legs do, but I'm just thinking about jumping up. The easiest one for me is just to keep the legs loose, jump past through a tuck, but it's more like a frog because the legs will part slightly, and then push up into that handstand position. So trying to get the up movement as best we can instead of from the back to the front. So jumping straight up. Now if I have that and I want to make it cleaner, I can bring legs together. I could go through straddle or pike and things like that. So same deal. See if you can get 4 or 5 attempts of your jump. You can use the wall if you need to. Okay, then I'm going to have a go at one block and the floor. So one hand is going to be on the floor, one hand is going to be on the block. And I'm just going to try and kick up into that position. So I'm not too worried about what each hand is doing. So you see, the way I done it there is I bent this elbow slightly to adjust for the height difference. I could keep that one straight, but which would mean that the whole body would tilt over to the left-hand side slightly. So it would look more like that at the top. So that one doesn't feel so natural for me. Even though I'm used to doing one arms, I prefer to have that slight bend in that elbow because it keeps the shoulders in line. So that one I don't like so much because it tilts the shoulders. So when we do the one arm handstands, I'm trying to focus on keeping these shoulders in the same height. So I bend this elbow or take the hand out. So, but I'm not too worried if you're just starting out on this, which variation you do. Just go with what feels easier to balance as opposed to thinking correct technique. Once we've done on one side, again, we can use the wall. So once we've done it on one side there, see if you can get balance. Swap over, same thing on the opposite side. See if you can hold balance. If you're not balancing, do it up against the wall, but still try and keep as much weight in the hands as possible and do both sides. The next goal is to try and get from this position to this position. Now we want to think a little bit more closer towards a one-arm handstand when we do this. So I'm not going to obviously teach a one-arm handstand in today's session, but we want to think how we would do if we're going to do a one-arm handstand. So we need to start to release some of the weight out of the hand that's on the block so we can move it out the way. Now, how I need to do that is not by shifting this shoulder around. If this hand is on the floor and this wants to be the hand that's working the hardest, I need to keep the shoulder, the elbow, center of mass on top of this hand. So I don't want it to go off to the side. So that's a big one. So watch what I do with my body. So have that left arm bent slightly. I'm going to push my right elbow actually inwards, so towards my midline. I'm going to open to straddle because it's slightly easier. I'm going to look at my right hand, and then I'm going to shift some weight over to the right. Now my left hand has automatically got a little bit lighter, and then I shift it out of the way and come back to the center. Don't get carried away with taking too much weight this way because you will fall that way. It's quite a subtle movement. It's more that I push this in and move my body slightly to it, and then it meets in the middle, which releases that hand. Same thing on the opposite side. So kick up, find that balance. Now straddle, left elbow pushes into midline. I move over, looking at the left hand. So I'm shifting my left elbow shoulder towards the right hand. I'm shifting my torso left slightly, and then that hand is loose and can come down. No, don't worry, you're not going to get that 100%. It's going to take a long time to get that, but start to feel that hand go loose, move it out of the way, come back down again. Just be careful that you don't throw too hard. If you throw too hard, it kicks that top leg over to the opposite side. We can do exactly the same with the yoga block. So there, straddle, look to the left hand, shift the weight, right hand goes light, I can move it out of the way. So once you've had a go at that one, we could do it up against the wall as well. I actually find the wall messes me up a little bit. So if you do have the balance to do it freestanding, I recommend you do it freestanding over the wall. And don't worry about perfecting the one arm. If you are working towards a one arm, obviously you can force yourself to try and do a little bit more detail and get it a little bit cleaner. Now I am going to cover quickly how we go back up. This is going to be very challenging for some people. So don't worry, if you can't get back up, another way of doing this is to do it in a push-up position. So you get the idea of what happens, but you might not be able to do it in a handstand yet, which is fine. Still just keep working that down movement. So if I'm going to go back up, I'm going to be in handstand position here. So I've got my hands quite narrow, and then I've got a block on either side of my hands. I'm going to do that same shift. So let's do a push-up first. So I'm going to look at my right hand. I'm going to shift weight over so there's more weight in my right side than my left. I'm going to go up onto fingertips by bending the elbow, grab hold of the block, pull it across. Now there's a big shift, so I push and do the same thing but opposite. So now I'm looking at this left hand, pushing this elbow in onto fingertips here, pick this block up, come back to center. So how it looks in handstand, exactly the same. Find that handstand position. Straddle is easier. I look at the right hand, shift the weight across, push the right elbow in, up onto fingertips on the left, grab hold of the block, bring it into the middle. Now I do this opposite. So I'm starting to look at the left hand, I push up onto fingertip on the right, looking at the left, grab hold of the block, come across. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that. For most people, that's going to be too challenging at the moment. But that's sort of the rough idea of the technique. Practice it and push up. You can practice it up against the wall. But just think of the slow going up to fingertips first. I'm not shifting the shoulders. The shoulders are staying in line. Have a play with it if you're up to that level. Now, this next drill I'm going to go through can be done on the floor with no blocks. I'm going to show it on the blocks. So it's just how we sort of make a lateral movement, so a sideways movement in a handstand. Again, it can be done on the wall. If we're going to do it on the blocks, ideally we're going to have three things the same height. It can be done on or the same shape. It can be done on three different things. It just makes it a little bit harder. So I'm going to show this one on yoga blocks to start with. Like I say, it can be done on the floor without the blocks and just making a sideways movement. So I'm going to have them pretty close to each other. A good way of gauging it is I'm just going to have a yoga block between them. So like that. I'm going to handstand on one of them, and then I'm going to shift weight to this right side. So a shift, look over to that right hand, shift the weight like we done on that last exercise. But now instead of moving this block out of the way, I'm going to shift weight over and put my hand over to the left. Then I'm going to shift over to the left, same thing, push this left elbow into the midline, look down at that left hand, keep the weight in that left hand as much as I can, shift over. So we make a lateral walk. So in handstand, it's here, straddle, I look at the right hand, shift the weight, push over to the left, look at the left hand, shift the weight, right side goes light, shift back, left again, go back, right, shift the left. So there's a lot going on there. You might need to rewatch that and slow it down. It can be done against the wall. You can do it, have a spot. I can do it without. So I'm going to do it on the floor without. Shift some weight over to the right so my left hand goes loose. Move the left hand. Shift over to the left. Right goes light. Shift the right hand. Bring back to center. So we can do that on the blocks. We can do that on the yoga blocks, handstand blocks, on the floor with nothing. I can do it on the wall. So it's shifting lateral. You could have multiple blocks and just keep walking.